I'm going to start with a roll call. Gretchen Driscoll.
Yep. Here.
Michelle Stamoulis.
Present.
Mary Smith.
Here.
Lonnie Scott.
Here.
Karen Nolte.
Here.
Any conflicts? And here's Laura Sanders walking in. Laura Sanders, can you say here?
Here.
Any conflicts of interest?
You made it, that's what counts.
Okay, hearing none, then we're going to go to any call for public agenda, for public comment on the agenda items. Okay. Then point 4, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Maris moved, Lonnie second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So I took the opportunity, so first of all, I want to thank everybody, and I think everybody understands that we're going to discuss the ballot initiative tonight, and then we're going to approve it on Friday at noon. And so I hope everybody came prepared with any questions for Sarah. And I want to thank you all for giving a little bit of your time this week, because I know 2 special meetings in 1 week is a lot to ask of people. This is a very important matter, and I really appreciate that extra time that you're putting into it. And I think it's great that we have extra opportunity too for public feedback. So I want to thank Michelle for taking the time to publicize this in a printed newspaper, which is the reason for the second meeting. But then I took the opportunity to add an action item for tonight, and this was just a late-breaking request from the Huron River Watershed Council for a letter of support from Dexter Township for a grant application they're putting into the U.S. Department of Forestry. We often have these requests for a letter of support, and typically I would just make it a consent item, but it came in too late for the last agenda, so since we were meeting, otherwise I would have had to say no to it. So I was like, well, it happens that we're meeting, it's due tomorrow. So does anybody have any questions about that letter of support? And if not, I'd take a motion to allow me to sign it and send it.
So moved. Support.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, so I'll send that tomorrow. And by the way, I should have said also they're including a request for some funding for us for closing costs if we have any residents that take advantage of the program. So, okay, so now we're going to move on to discussion items, which is the police millage and the fire millage renewal ballot language discussion. And I want to thank Sarah for driving all the way here from Troy and working extra hard to get, she did a lot of research into our 2018 ballot initiative and previous ballot initiatives to make sure that she had a complete understanding of where our starting point was for these millages to make sure that we are using the correct language in this initiative. And Sarah, do you want to say anything before I open it up to questions for the board?
Just that the numbers that you see in the actual resolution and the ballot language are going to change based on information I received later this afternoon pertaining to after the rollback, what your actual rates should be for these villages. So what's in there is pretty close to what it is, but it's not exact.
And it's the language that's in there now is based on my memory, and the updated language is based on what we actually approved in August. So when we had our assessor presentation and we approved the millage rates, that was our formal millage rate, and I provided that to Sarah today, and she's updated the drafts with those updated precise numbers. Does anybody have any questions then about the language in here? I do. I have a question. If nobody else, I'll jump in. So on both of these, there's the language of the resolution, and then there's the proposal, which is on page 2. And it says, how it says, shall the limitation on the amount of taxes which may be imposed on taxable property in the township of Dexter, Washtenaw County, Michigan, be increased by 1.419, that'll change. I wondered if we could change that language instead to say be continued at, or alternatively, could it say be levied at instead of increased? And you know what I'm getting at, because it's not going to be an increase for people, It's going to be, it's going to be the same as they've been paying for the last few years.
Right, and I knew that question was gonna be asked, and because even though you're not increasing the amount based on what it was last year, you're still increasing it over and above what
It would be.
would otherwise would be if the millage wasn't expiring. So the law requires you to include the language that it is gonna be an increase. And so it has to go in there, but then if you see down further that it says that
I
it's
saw
increased
it.
as a renewal of what you already have.
Right.
So we really can't get around that.
Can we include, are you permitted to have explanatory language in a ballot initiative? Like a prep, like when something appears on the ballot, can you have a preceding explanatory paragraph or anything like that?
Yeah, so there'll be like a summary of what the proposal is about, and then you've got the language, right? And so in your materials, you can explain what's happening. But the actual language of the proposal, of the question, has to be worded to include the word increase.
And in this,
Or increasing.
and how does the summary who prepares the summary and who approves the language? If there's a summary that's printed in the ballot, who prepares it and,
I just had a question on this language, just
Yeah.
to your same point. Can we say somewhere in that first two sentences, because the millage expired? So shall blah, 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 because the millage expired, shall the limitation, shall the, in other words, preface it with a couple words that the millage expired, because I get what you're saying, the millage expired, so it is a new millage, but it isn't. So if we preface it with, because the millage expired December 31st, 2023,
leaving no
like
funding,
to
yeah.
serve that, like add like 5 words in the back. I'm gonna have the same issue that you had.
Yeah, or because even, could we say even more, because the millage expired, leaving no funds available for police
Well,
services,
that, I
you know?
don't think we need to get into
Why not?
that, well,
What, I mean,
I mean-
that's true, isn't it? I mean, maybe not for police.
Can't
but
you
for
just
fire.
put as a renewal of previously voter? Can you put that beforehand where
As a renewal of a previously voter authorized millage.
this will be a renewal of?
Which
and
ex-
then, of course, which will expire,
Yeah.
but there will be now an increase. Would be a little more.
I think we were all
Which-
looking for
which
a little bit more
expired
clarifying
effective
language on,
December
because it's about timing, right? If we were doing this year, it wouldn't say that increase, correct?
So
Yeah.
I should have gotten this out sooner, but I guess there was no election. So.
I think we can put it.
I mean, if we have to say increase anyways, do we just go for the full amount?
Well, that's what I wondered.
I think is the other question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because we were trying to not increase so that we didn't have to say increase, but if we're going to say increase,
we might as well,
we
yeah.
might as well go for the entire thing, right?
Then it's not a true renewal.
Then it's not, no longer would be.
Right.
Then the
You'd have
top,
to take renewal out and just say it's an
We
increase.
can still say due to the expiration.
Do we? Do we have to take, because it is a renewal of a millage in the same way that this reads?
I think it's really.
'Cause it already says an
I think
increase.
it's really important that we clarify it's an increase, and we truly do an increase.
When I talk to the MTA, there's certain criteria of being able to allow it to be called a renewal versus an increase.
Yeah, so there's a whole, like, another paragraph that you sort of have to add. So if you look at your previous one, your previous fire millage, when you went for the full 2.4 mils in 2014, I think it was, or maybe it was 2018, I'm getting confused. When you went for the full, there's a whole section there that talks about you're asking for an increase above and beyond the Headley Amendment, you cite the constitutional amendment in there, right? And so there's a whole nother paragraph that goes in sort of on top of this paragraph you're sort of asking for a renewal of what was previously authorized, but then you're also asking for a roll up to above and beyond your rollback. And so it's like a two-component,
Got it.
and you can certainly do that, if that's what you want to do, then these need to change.
Sure.
Which is totally fine, we can do that. I think I can find a place to put the expiration, I think I can just probably put it as a renewal of a previously voter authorized millage that expired, because it will say, this will be in February, so it expired on December 31st, 2023, to provide funds. And then in your summary, I think you can explain, this will not result in an actual realized, your tax bill will not be higher.
This is a
Right.
renewal at the previous
This is a
rate.
renewal,
Yeah.
You paid this, and you paid this in January, and you'll pay it again next January. If you vote yes, it's kind of the,
It'll just be a continuation.
Do we have to have that summary verbiage available, ready by Saturday also, or by Friday also? Or when do you need to file, the 4th?
The 5th,
The 5th?
5/4.
Does that summary have to be ready by that
which is
Tuesday?
Tuesday, a week from today.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my other question is, do we draft that or does the county draft the summary?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, I think we draft the
Yeah.
language and propose it to the county, and they're gonna look at all of this, and then they will determine whether it satisfies the requirements to put on the ballot. So yes.
Yep.
So we should draft this by Friday, draft the summary by Friday, too. So what do you all think of Lonnie's idea that if we have to use the word increase, we change our strategy? Are you?
I no longer like my own idea.
I don't.
It doesn't, I thought it was just this, but if we have to add more and there's a whole other, I would rather go with the
Similar
more
approach.
explanatory version of this and stay with where we're at. with the
Does
renewal.
everybody agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
So then by Friday,
So-
right, so we're going to stick with this approach.
Just the renewal.
We're going to have you add the clarifying language to the extent that is allowable under the law. We'll try to we will draft a summary by the time we meet on Friday at noon.
The only caveat to that is that, I know what your millage was your original millage was for the fire and emergency services. It was 2.4. That was clear from one of your prior resolutions. I don't have that yet for the police.
Okay,
I don't, because the last two elections were renewals. And so I don't know what the initial millage was for that. So if you're asking for a roll up, which you're not asking for a roll up. So then I think we're okay. Because by putting the December 31st language in there, the expiration, I want to make sure that the voters understand what actually expired, what rate is actually expiring. If that makes sense, right? Which is the roll down,
right.
the rollback rate, not.
The original rate,
Right.
the original
I don't want them
rate.
to be confused that that they were being assessed or levied the original millage rate
Oh.
in December.
Yeah.
Because it had been rolled back. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I almost wonder if we just
I don't have
change,
hesitation with the date.
yeah, I almost wonder if we drop the date. If you moved as a renewal of a previously voter authorized millage, I don't know if the date matters.
It matters to me because
Yeah,
it
it's
expired
passed.
December 31st of 2023 means, it just expired 2 weeks, 2 months ago. But if it just says it was previously authorized, it could have been 10 years ago.
I like having the date.
I don't know that I think when most people read it, the date could be, I guess we'll have to see it. We'll have to see what the whole draft looks like, but I do think that the date could be confusing to folks. That they feel like if we're saying in the summary, this is a renewal of your previous rate, and then this says a renewal at the beginning, I don't know that folks really focus on the day of how long the millages have lasted. if that makes sense. So I guess we just have to see it. But I share sort of a concern that I think I hear you saying is like, the date may make people think that this is a secondary levying of that amount.
I think it would be okay.
We'll look at, I'll look at a draft, and maybe the three of us, the executive team, can look at a draft and think about how we might read it if we were just a voter, and work with Sarah a little bit and try to come up with something that seems intuitive for voters. I mean, Sarah, another thought that popped into my mind is, can we make it clear that that there's been a millage in place for, 20 years or something, and it expired recently, something like,
Yeah, so for the police millage, I think if we can track that down, I think.
I can retrieve it.
So far, she's been able to send me 2014 and 2018.
Mhm.
And the 2014 document satisfied the inquiry as it pertains to the police and fire, or the fire and emergency services. The police one, if I can find where that original Headley override was done, then in our summary, we can say, and in the resolution, we can spell out more clearly also the in X date, the voters approved a 2 point, whatever it was, 1.5 or 1.7 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then on these dates, they were renewed and renewed and renewed. And then that will form the basis to show in your resolution and in the summary that the voters have continuously approved this millage. Like, this isn't new. This is just, it's expired just like it has in the previous years, and we're only asking for the amount up to the rollback amount that you have already authorized.
Okay,
And your tax bill will not go up,
all right.
so to speak.
Because of the mill.
Does that make sense to everybody? Are there more questions or concerns? So I will also try to have by Friday, assuming this 2.95, how long are the balances going to last in the fire? I think I'll have some forecasting, financial forecasting for you based on these millage rates, too. So anything else, Sarah? Did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that these numbers were not accurate at this point. That's why they're highlighted in here. And that those will, I think that the fire and emergency services is like 2.35, not 2.33, it's 2.35 something. And I'll have to go back again and look at what you sent me from the police.
And I think the form that we completed in August has some of that historical information. So we can send that to her tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can actually do that tonight.
Or I can dig through your stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so the fire would be 2.3543, and the police would be 1.3903.
Okay, so any other questions from the board on this? Okay, so we'll try to get an updated draft to you by Thursday, by end of the day on Thursday. Does that seem, we're gonna have to, so we have to do what we have to do. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to the next call for public comment on non-agenda items, and welcome to the Planning Commission and Rowan Brady. The Planning Commission is here, and they're gonna be talking about the master plan in a bit. Megan, does anybody want to make any comments before we adjourn? Okay, then call for an adjournment.
A motion to call for the adjournment. I'll second it.
So that was Laura Sanders, second, and Maris Metz. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned, and you guys can jump up.